G'day, legends, and it is finally over. John Jones Fight Week is done. It is behind us. UFC 309 is in the books. Let's get this thing bagged and tagged and talk about some of the fights. We're not going to talk about every single one because there was a lot of good fights. There was a lot of standout moments, but just some of the bigger takeaways of UFC 309, all right? Now, the first thing or the first person of note that I would like to bring up is Jim Miller. Jim Miller, thank you. Please, God, keep going. I love you, Jim Miller. The Jim Miller run starts now. All right, Jim Miller versus Chandler, and then after that, it's rocking him up the rankings. I want to see Jim Miller on that Sean O'Malley. I want to see him on that Umar run. You know what I'm saying? I want to see Jim Miller act like he's a prospect, and his name is Jim Miller and just rocket him up there. That's what I want to see now. It is insane to see him get another win in the lightweight division at 41, all right? And he did the thing that we all wanted to see. Don't be silly. Always pull a ghillie, right? Gives us young bloods with bad knees, someone to look up to. And somewhere in the distance, I can hear scribbling on paper. I can hear Dustin Poirier signing a 7-fight deal with the UFC. Dusty's like, I don't care if it takes me 100 UFC fights. I'm going to get that ghillie too. Jimmy boy, please keep it up forever, mate. It was just fun. It was just a vibe. It was great to see again. Actually, I should have put this before Jim Miller, but now that we're here, screw it. I'm going to mention it here. The old gloves need to stay forever in perpetuity. I didn't think that I could ever be so happy to see a piece of leather. Well, there are times. But anyway, I didn't think that watching the UFC, I could be so happy to see a piece of leather. But my God, I love the old gloves. I didn't realize how much I missed them until we were about 3 fights in. And I was like, my God, I miss the old gloves. So Dana did the post-fight press. He said he is going to go back to the old gloves. But for a couple of weeks, for a couple of fight nights, we're going to need the new gloves because, quite frankly, the UFC just stopped making the old gloves and they don't have enough of them for all the events. So I feel like at the start of 2025, where are we at? At the start of 2025? I don't even know. It's too early in the morning. At the start of next year, it's going to be nothing but the old gloves as the new gloves, and I'm absolutely here for it. All right, the next fight that I wanted to bring up was Ruffy versus Jan Top. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor. Enjoy going back to that biker gang that is the BKFC because we don't need you, mate. We don't need you, mate. All right? We have got Ruffy, okay? And the entire Fighting Nerds team. But Ruffy is the new old McGregor, and I'm here for it. I felt like it was back in 2014, and we were watching the rise again. I loved it, right? Now, yeah, like Yon Top, Ruffy couldn't put Yon Top away, right? But Yon Top was like 20 pounds overweight, okay? So he didn't lose any of that, what is it that you would call it? The fluid around the brain that helps with knockouts. He didn't lose any of that. So his chin was made of goddamn granite. I can't blame Ruffy for not being able to put him away, but it was an amazing performance. And I know that Yon Top really missed weight badly, but hopefully he can keep his job. You know, maybe if he's off weight again, then cut him, or just move him up to heavyweight. Teach him how to do a backflip, get him to go train with Chris Barnett. He'll fit right in, mate. So either send him up to heavyweight, but give him another chance. You know what I mean? Moving on now to BoNichols versus Paul Craig. At first, I know I did pick BoNichols to win, but at first, going into this, me and the boys on the live stream, we were talking about how I thought the entire fight was going to be Paul Craig on the bottom, throwing up his arms and his legs out of nowhere, while BoNichols is postured up on top, raining down ground and pound, and there's a chance that Paul Craig could catch BoNichols in that triangle that he loves to get. But what it actually turned out to be was simply BoNichols deciding that Paul Craig is incapable of throwing a coordinated punch. Paul Craig has less skills than a WMMA fighter. And Nichols decided, you know what, I'm actually going to get in some rounds of striking and learn, I might just show off my striking skills. And what we saw was the most garbage fight I've ever seen in my life. A college wrestler who was throwing the biggest, meatiest hooks anybody has ever seen. The hooks were so big and so meaty, they were throwing BoNichols off balance, which how much he threw them. It was the rush from Dricus du Plessis looks less uncoordinated than a regular swing from BoNichols. And then, after that garbage performance against the heavy bag, which was Paul Craig, the crowd started chanting overrated. The entire time they were chanting overrated. Well done to the crowd. And then Nickel went on to celebrate. He celebrated like he was the meme. You know that meme of the guy who comes third and he like smashes the bottle of champagne and gives the crowd the middle finger and then kisses the girl presenting the medals. You know that meme? That was BoNichols last night. Like he was, I'm serious. He was acting like he just won a championship. And no joke, he compared himself to the GOATs of the sport while doing it. He said, GSP, Anderson Silva, John Jones have all had great fights against tough opponents that have gone to decision, and this one was mine. Or something along those lines. Not exactly word for word, but something along those lines. BoNichols is probably the most unself-aware fighter in the UFC today. He might be peaking delusion today. Yeah, it is insane how good he thinks he is and how good he is not. The talk about when he does his podcast and he talks about how he matches up with Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev, you need to shut up, dude. Yeah, you're not even. If Khamzat Chimaev is the wolf, then BoNichols is like a Shih Tzu puppy dog, like barely the same species. Can we just get BoNichols versus Joe Pyfer? Just cancel one of these two out, all right? No more talking about BoNichols. I honestly think that performance was so bad and the crowd is so anti-Nickel. That might be the last time we see him on a pay-per-view for a long time, which is just totally fine with me. Now, moving on to Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Now, before this fight started, I said pre-fight, if you broke down the skills of these two fighters, Oliveira and Michael Chandler, like if it was an RPG skill set list, Oliveira is better than Michael Chandler absolutely everywhere except in maybe the open mat wrestling. And that is exactly the way the fight turned out. It was domination from Oliveira. It was domination in all ways. The striking was better, the ground game was better, the submissions were better, the judo throw, everything, anywhere that MMA could MMA, Oliveira was better. All the way up until the last round, where Charles Oliveira lost focus and had his Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz moment, right? And Chandler got in a good strike, and Chandler actually postured up and rained down some good ground and pound. And then when they got back to the ground, that Michael Chandler cemented the idea that he is the dumbest MMA fighter we have ever seen. The decision-making from Michael Chandler is insane to me. He had a hurt Charles Oliveira, and rather than marauding forward or choosing to push forward against him, Michael Chandler does the old, come at me, bruh. And Charles Oliveira is like, yeah, bet, mate. And as Charles Oliveira comes at Chandler, to Chandler's invitation, Chandler turns around and gives him his own back, to which Oliveira can just quite happily backpack ride out the rest of the round and win. In a fight where you have maybe been 10-8'd in one of the rounds, in a fight where you are clearly losing every single round, and this is your moment to get it back, you do that and give up your back. Truly, truly embarrassing from Michael Chandler. Plus the back of the headshot. Is it just becoming incredibly obvious to anybody else that every single time Michael Chandler is in the cage, he is cheating as much as he can? Horrible back of the headshots. And the ref, Keith Peterson, somewhere Dominic Cruz is talking somebody's ear off about how right he is. Somewhere in America, Dominic Cruz is running around doing the biggest victory lap anyone has ever victory lapped. Dominic Cruz is celebrating at how much we are all turning on Michael Chandler and Keith Peterson today. Either way, this is what should happen with Michael Chandler and lightweight and Charles Oliveira in general, right? It should be Conor McGregor, jail or retirement. Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett, while Moicano heals up his collarbone. Islam versus Arman Tsarukyan, then Islam versus Ilia Topuria. That fight's just fun. We got to see that fight. Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt or a number one contender spot. Either one, who cares? Done. Lightweight is sorted. Now, let us move on quickly to John Jones. John Jones and Stipe Miocic. I am a confused man. I am so confused by the internet and its narratives and the people on the internet. I don't get it. I honestly believe that my brain is wired differently. Going into this fight, the narrative was, who cares about this fight? Stipe is old. John Jones is going to destroy him. This isn't a real test for John Jones. He's ducking Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall is the real test at heavyweight. Then the fight happens, and John Jones destroys an old Stipe. Stipe looks old, lands clean shots on John Jones in the second and the third round. John Jones looked like classic John Jones in the first round, beat the piss out of Stipe, and finished him at the end of the third round. Great. John Jones looked great. John Jones should have looked great against Stipe. I don't understand it. Anyway, so John Jones goes in there, looks great against an old Stipe Miocic. Stipe lands some clean shots on John Jones. And then after the fight, everyone's like, oh my God, John Jones, unbelievable. How did he do that to Stipe? He's clearly the GOAT. Aspinall doesn't want any of that smoke. John Jones is definitely the best heavyweight in the world. Before the fight started, we all said UFC 309 was a waste of time because John Jones was going to beat the piss out of Stipe. And Tom Aspinall was the real test. John Jones beats the piss out of Stipe. Stipe lands good shots on John Jones. The fight finishes, and now John Jones is undeniably the best heavyweight in the world. How the hell did he do that to Stipe? What a GOAT. Exactly what happens, exactly what is meant to happen, happens. MMA community blown away by outcome. God help me. Someone help me out there. I don't get why we're all so surprised that John Jones managed to beat the living piss out of the part-time 42-year-old, hasn't fought in 4 years, Stipe Miocic. Not even part-time. Actually retired. Was working his full-time firefighting job while in training camp for this fight. John Jones does what John Jones is meant to do. Crowds blown away is the headline from this weekend. And I do not understand why. I'm shocked at, I'm not shocked at the outcome of this fight. I'm not. John Jones was meant to beat the hell out of Stipe. I'm shocked at everyone's shock at the outcome of this fight, especially considering the very prominent narrative going into UFC 309 that this main event was a waste of time and the real test is Tom Aspinall. The fact that an old, sloppy Stipe Miocic could land shots on John Jones proves to me that the narrative has not changed at all. Yet everyone is like, maybe he is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. What do you expect John Jones to do against a heavy bag? Not style on it? Obviously, he was going to style on it. To me, nothing, the narrative to me has not moved forward in any way, except for one thing that I might do another video on, or maybe just talk about this in the light. Maybe I'll do a break. Maybe I'll put it in the members. I don't know. But John Jones is probably the best troll social media expert we have had since Chael Sonnen. Legitimately, when you look at all the things that John Jones has done this weekend, he has made that Aspinall fight so much bigger by everything that he's done. And the fact that listen, that's a whole other thing. We'll break that down in a different video. But yeah, John Jones did what John Jones was meant to do. Fans blown away. Dougie confused. And why fans are blown away. Like, yeah, he beat the shit out of Stipe. That is what was meant to happen, guys. Why are we so impressed by what was meant to happen? It's, you know, the sun's going to rise in the morning tomorrow, guys. Look out. You'll be very pumped to see it. Anyway, good on John Jones. Well done. Good on him. Where does he rank in the pound-for-pound list now? Because he is back in the pound-for-pound list now. So I'm very interested to see how we break all of that down this week. That is probably going to be the big topic of conversation this week. Where does John Jones stack in the pound-for-pound list? Is he above Ilya? It's hard to say. This is the problem when you don't have really tough competition in there next to you. You look so good. And then when you're trying to do a skill set breakdown, it's very hard to like properly judge the skills because you're not really seeing them be properly tested. I wish that this fight had never happened because it feels like it's just made the MMA landscape even more confusing. But I guess for fun, the people like us that like to talk about MMA, it's just made it more fun. Anyway, that's it. That's today's video. If this is the first time you've been here, g'day. My name's Dougie. I try and make an MMA video every single day. I go live about 3 times a week. So hit that subscribe button down there. If you want to know when I go live, hit that bell down there. And if you're already on board with the channel, please go ahead and hit that like button. Help this channel grow. And until then, I will see all of you in the next video. Have a good one.